I'd like to take you along the journey of the genetics of BALL from the basic as well as the complex entities which have been described. Before going into the the complexities of B cell genetics, we must know how leukemias are developed. So basically, this is a two-hit developmental model wherein the first hit is usually an initiating lesions, and we all know these initiating lesions are either translocations or fusions or ploidy events, and these confer the hematopoietic stem cell a self-renewal property. But this isn't sufficient to give rise to a leukemic clone and requires a second hit, which are termed as the propagating lesions, and also all or the cooperating events. And these primarily are copy number variations or single nucleotide variations, which are somatic in nature and occur in the following genes related with B cell development, cell cycle or tumor suppressor, the RAS signaling pathway, and epigenetics, and they confer a developmental arrest or differentiation block. In BALL, up to 3 to 4 such genetic events may be noted, or clones may be noted in a particular leukemia, whereas in TALL the burden is little higher, and if we go into the solid malignancies, it's still higher. So if we look at this chart out here, so this is the St. therapy, chemotherapy protocol chart over the years. And if we look at the last two chemotherapy protocols, we'll find that the overall survival probability is nearly same, around 93 to 94%, which signifies that we've reached a saturation for chemotherapy currently. And to improve the survival further, we need to develop or get more novel targeted treatments and better further fine risk stratification as well as early detection and prediction of relapse and reducing the toxicities related with chemotherapies. So before going further, a little bit about the abnormalities or type of genetic lesions which we see in acute leukemias. There may be single nucleotide changes, which we term as single nucleotide variations or point mutations. They can be small insertions or deletions ranging in size from 2 to up to 150 base pairs, or they may be short tandem repeats from 150 to 1000 base pairs. From 1000 base pairs to up to 100,000 base pairs or 1 MB, we term these lesions as copy number variations. And then further larger than 1.5 MB, they are termed as large scale structural variations or chromosomal variations. Now these larger structural variations can further be balanced or unbalanced type. And the balanced type, there is no net loss or gain of genetic material, and these include the translocation, fusions, and inversions, whereas the unbalanced types include the CNVs as well as the largest structural variations of ploidy. And there are different genetic techniques available to detect these lesions. For single base pairs, you can go in for PCR Sanger sequencing, or for you can go in for small targeted NGS panels. If you wish to include your CNV in detection, that is the secondary abnormalities also into detection, then you can use an MLPA or combine a microarray or FISH along with these techniques. You can also detect them together in whole genome sequencing, but it takes a lot of, it's a high cost and requires a lot of bioinformatic analysis before you can do that. So what particular techniques you use in particular setting will always depend upon the expertise available, the type of logistic support, the type of laboratory setup, and what recurring or per sample costs you wish to deliver. So we all know conventionally that in pediatric BALL, we have been using cytogenetics and combination of RT-PCR or FISH to detect these entities for now last 2 decades. And these have been very well now stratified into high risk, that is hypo and near haploidy cases, IM21, 922, and ML translocations or KMT2A translocations. The intermediate group, which is B other and now includes the PH-like also, the IGH translocations in 119, and the good risk ones of hyperdiploidy 1221. There also has been fascinating interest growing in MLPA for the last decade or so, which detects the copy number abnormalities. Since it's a very technically easy to perform, does not require very elaborative instrumentation, and is also cost effective. And the first such paper was an integrated cytogenetic MLPA risk stratification, which was proposed by Moorman et al. In 2014. What they did was they classified the copy number variation or the secondary hits in leukemia into 2 groups as good risk copy number alterations and the intermediate and poor risk, and further tried and integrate this with the cytogenetic or the risk groups, which we have already seen in the last slide. So what they tried is intermediate risk group was further stratified into intermediate 1 and 2 based on this copy number risk profile. And what they could differ was that intermediate risk 1, that is cases with intermediate cytogenetics and good copy number risk profile, had a relatively good event-free and overall survival, whereas those with intermediate risk 2 behave like in high risk cases, and these need to be given an escalated therapy post induction phase. The frequency of the secondary abnormalities in BALL are as follows. The most common one is PAX5, which is seen around 30% cases of ALL, followed by CDKN2A, 2B in 25%. IKZF is seen in 15% of pH negative ALL. But if you look at pH positive or pH like ALL, they are seen in 60 to 80 to 30 or 30 to 50% of cases. Coming to IKZF abnormalities, which have also gained importance for the last decade or so. So IKZF1 has 8 axons, and as I told before, that deletions are more common, seen in nearly 15% of pH negative ALL cases. The deletion most common types are 1 to 8 exon deletions, followed by 4 to 7 exon deletions. Rarely now the fusion and mutations have also been described. But what is known is IKZF as a poor prognostic marker in BALL, which was first shown in this study in 2013, wherein they showed that IKZF in high risk, intermediate and high risk cases had a high cumulative incidence of relapse, as well as this could be accounted partly for this being seen in more in cases of pH like or pH positive. But if we use multivariate analysis, and still IKZF1 stands as a candidate which has a relative risk of 2.2 leading to an event in BALL. What was more important is what has recently been described with IKZF1 in a paper in 2018 by Stanula et al. And this was an IKZF1 plus profile in BALL. Now, IKZF1 plus profile is basically an IKZF1 deletion along with deletion of CDKN2A, 2B or PEX5, but without a deletion of ERG. Now, what they did was, in cases with IKZF1 plus profile, they divided the MRD into standard and high risk, and cases with high risk MRD and IKZF1 profile had a significant higher risk of cumulative incidence of relapse, as well as poor event-free survival. pH like has already been discussed in last few lectures. So we know it's basically a genome expression profile. So you detect it using probes or genes and looking at their expression, and then telling whether this is a pH like, and was first defined by DCOG, that is Dutch cohort, as well as COG cohort. However, both of them use different probe sets, and only 15 of their probe sets overlapped. There were further, the genetic lesions underlying the pH like group were described in 2002, but they can be broadly classified into these 4 groups. That is ABL class fusions, which involve these lesions, the JAK-STAT signaling pathway abnormalities, which are primarily CLF2 expression, and JAK2, EPOR and TSP fusions, as well as mutations, the RAS signaling mutations, and the rare subtypes of tyrosine kinase fusions. And these can be better seen here in this figure. We have the JAK family, the ABL class, other kinase, and RAS signaling mutation, and they ultimately go on to activate the STAT5, mTOR, CRKL, and MAP kinase pathways, which lead on to proliferation and growth survival in pH-like cases. The frequency of these different lesions in childhood pH-like ALL are as follows. The common one are CLF2 overexpression with equal incidence of both these fusions, this being seen in small A children, whereas this 10 years or more older age, and followed by ABL fusions, which are seen 14%, and then RAS mutations. This I'll skip because it's part of the next talk possibly. What is important is how we go on and detect the pH-like lesions. So there are many different algorithms available to detect. First of all, people do screening by a low density array. So you can use a 15 or 9-8 gene validated predictor, which can give you about the gene expression and pH-like signature. You can alternately use a qPCR expression upfront, and then use a combination of these methods. The most commonly followed approach is this, which has been highlighted in the earlier talk also. So once you have ruled out the common aneuploidy lesions as well as recurrent translocations, you can do a CLF2 expression by flow cytometry. And if it's positive, you can do a CLF2 IGH or this break apart probe and do a FISH finding which translocation is there. If it's negative, you can go on to the second screen of using a FISH probes 1, 2, JAK2, PDF alpha and beta, and then look at these expressions. If they are negative, one can go in for much more deep sequencing or higher sensitive techniques like RNA-seq. The UK 2000 ALL testing strategy for pH-like is a little different. They do it only in cases of B-cell other who are poor response to treatment, that is MRD is positive, and they use FISH probes only for ABL1, ABL2, and PDGFR alpha, and if positive, they consider adding TKI. The St. Jude protocol is different in this regard because they go in for RNA sequencing upfront. And if they identify an ABL class fusion, they add dasatinib. If it's not identified, they go in for a whole exome or genome sequencing and then look for JAK-STAT lesions to roll in ruxolitinib. What was important was in BALL development was these two papers which came in 2018 and 2019. These were landmark big intercollaborative research studies wherein in a large group of BALL childhood as well as adult cases, they did complete transcriptomic analysis of the ALL leukemia cases. The transcriptome involves the complete evaluation of the RNA or RNA sequencing, and it gives you an idea about not only about the different known, unknown fusions within the leukemia, but also about the expression of different genes in leukemic cells. And both this information of expression as well as presence of fusions or translocations, they were able to classify the leukemia cases into different groups. And as we can see up here, this was from this study in 2019 from St. Jude's. They could, based on these different gene expression profile statistical analysis, they could subgroup the BALL cases into around 20 to 24 different subgroups. And if we see here, the ones which are circled are the newer subgroups which have recently been described in 2019. And these include the DUX4 rearrangement, NUTM1, MEF2D, ZNF384 rearrangement. We have also identified two mutations which are hotspot driver initiating leukemia initiating mutations in IKZF1 and PAX5. In addition, we have PAX5 intragenic amplifications, we have BSEL2 MYC translocations, and some genome expression profiles like ETVS RUNX1 or KMT2 like or ZNF38 like. So considering these new entities with the genetic subgroups which we already know, now we are able to characterize up to 94 to 95% of childhood ALLs completely. And this is important to know. Is important to know because, as highlighted earlier, DUX4 NUT1 has a very good prognosis. ZNF384 and PAX lesions have intermediate, whereas MEF2D and BCL2 have poor prognosis. The salient features of these have been highlighted in the previous talk, so I'll not go into the details of this. This is the IM21. So we had also defined IM21 lesion on MLPA, wherein we found that it shows a characteristic step ladder pattern. So if you look, you have amplification of the RUNX1 region gene followed by a terminal deletion, which is characteristic of IM21 and correlates very well with the FISH sort of clustering which is seen. The DUX4 rearrangement, the salient features are it's seen in 8 to 10% BALL. The most common partner is IGH DUX4. It's very difficult to detect because it's a highly repetitive region and is a small gene. So you require transcriptomic analysis. But as Dr. Prashant suggested, you can go in for flow cytometry, and if CD371 is positive, you're definitely looking at DUX4. Another marker, surrogate marker, is ERG deletion. So if you are finding ERG deletion of MLPA, you are looking at DUX4 because it has good prognosis. In ZNF384 rearrangement subtype, it's seen in 6% of BALL other cases. It also has different partners. Common ones are these. And this is how they present in older children on high WBC counts. Immunophenotype again is CD10 usually negative, and they also lose CD19 during therapy. So one should be cautioned, should be advised while using CAR-T in these cases, and they are also FLT3 positive and have intermediate prognosis. The MEF2D subgroup has the poorest of prognosis. It also has different partners known. Immunophenotypically, it's again CD10 negative and 38 positive and shows high increased HDAC expression. So it can be targeted with HDAC inhibitors. The other novel BALL subtypes are as follows. You have PAX5 alterations or intragenic amplifications. You have these two mutations, point mutations, and the other, rare rearrangements or like genome expression profiles. So what is important is this flowchart, which concisely tells how you can go about and detect these lesions in BALL. So upfront, you have to do a conventional cytogenetics or a DNA index flow cytometry, and then thereby you can use either a FISH panel for the common recurrent abnormalities or use an RT-PCR as your laboratory setup is. Followed by that, you can go in for CLF2 expression by flow or RQ-PCR, or you can do a pH-like genome expression profile based on a smaller gene panel or low density array or RQ-PCR array. Once you are doing here, you are carrying a FISH approach. If this is positive, you can use a screen for this FISH panel. If it's negative, go in for this screen, and you can add the newer genetic abnormalities of MEF2D and this base. These are optional, but if you wish to detect them, because MEF2D has poor prognosis, you can use this probes. On the other hand, if you are using this approach, you can go in for a targeted RNA fusion panel. We have developed one in our own laboratory, which has can detect 105 translocations and current under validation process and also detects all the newer fusions as well as pH-like entities. Along with this, one can add on MLPA, which will give you information about IKZF plus profile, ERG deletion and DUX4 and PEX5 amplification. If negative and there are no resource constraints, then you can go on for exome sequencing. We have also, fascinated by the long read sequencing in BALL subtypes. So we've done it in the used MinION for detecting, the RNA fusions and the other things, but it has currently a lot of higher, error rate around 20%. This was one case where of IM21 where we could detect CRLF2P2YR8 by this long read sequencing. So ETPL. So finally, this slide I would like to say, because it's not only the newer entities which one needs to detect comprehensively, but now we also look toward to reduce the toxicities and relapse, and this can be done by incorporating pharmacogenomics, especially looking at the SNPs in the genes for related with metabolism of 6-MP, and also with these genes which are related with inactivation of your other chemotherapeutic agents like steroids and 6-MP in ALL. And this is important now to further improve the survival in our case. So this should be a comprehensive approach for BALL detection. Thank you.